How's it going, everybody out there in Global Hack Week land? What's going on? All right, looks like we've got a couple of folks in the chat. Let me know where y'all are joining us from. Welcome to Global Hack Week Open Source. I'm really excited to be keeping Global Hack Week rolling here. It looks like some folks have some questions from the previous stream. So if you do have any questions just regarding general Global Hack Week items like completing challenges, signing up, registering, things like that, make sure you drop into our Discord, and I'll drop the link in chat here. Drop into the Discord, open up a ticket, or ask a question in any of the many forums and threads that we have regarding just general questions for Global Hack Week. And I'm sure someone from the team will be able to get back to you as soon as possible. And it looks like we've got folks from United States, Nigeria, Kenya, couple of folks from Kenya. We've got somebody joining from France. That's amazing. Rwanda, India. Shout out to all my folks from Asia and Africa in the chat. Pakistan. Lovely stuff. All right. Well, my name is Rosendo Pili. I work in customer success at Major League Hacking. Just real quick in the chat, I know y'all are telling me exactly where you're from in the world, but let me know how familiar you are with MongoDB. Let me know whether you've used it before, heard of it before, or if this is your first time just learning of its existence. Basically, the main goal for today is to make sure that everyone here is actually comfortable using MongoDB and exactly understanding what it is. So I'm going to give a in-depth explanation of everything, and I'm actually going to go in and show y'all how to set up your first clusters and databases and then query them using JavaScript a little bit later. I actually have this agenda driven up here as well. So it looks like some folks have used it, have heard about it. We've got some brand new people to that's great. If you've never used it before, I am glad to show you how it's done here. Heard and used of it in a personal small project, not on the production level. We're not going to be covering production level stuff today, although a lot of the information that I give you, like in terms of the demo, that is, a lot of the information that I give you is going to be really useful for when you do want to make the jump and start doing production level utilization of MongoDB. We've got some folks that are using it a lot for projects, small projects, heard of it, but never used it before. All right. Well, it looks like a lot of folks in the chat have some sort of, I guess, familiarity with MongoDB, maybe never used it before, maybe use it for some small projects. One thing I do want to note is that we are going to have this entire hour together. We're going to do an introduction to MongoDB. It's going to be an introduction to the MongoDB document model. We're going to touch on data modeling. We're going to do a brief intro into CRUD operations. Then I'm going to show you how to set up your first collection database, insert, create, read, and update different things inside of your database. And we're going to be using JavaScript to do that. Afterwards, we're going to review just MongoDB's database as a service. I'll take you through some features and cool things you could do with MongoDB during Global Hack Week. And then we're going to cap it off with a Q&A. Can you read comments on YouTube? Yes, I am reading these comments right now. So I am able to read comments on YouTube and on Twitch. So if you are on either platform, I've got you covered. All right. Well, with that being said, let's get into it. Another question for the crowd out there. Does anyone here know why MongoDB is actually called MongoDB? And while I'm waiting for those answers to pour in, just make sure you do register and check in at the link in that's scrolling across the bottom here. I'm going to drop it in chat for everyone as well. GHW OS25 MongoDB workshop. And once again, the question is, does anyone here know why MongoDB is called MongoDB? All right. It looks like maybe someone has done a quick search on the matter, or has been to this workshop before, or is just like in general heard about MongoDB before and why it's called that. Essentially, the founders of MongoDB set out to design a database that was specifically for developers that were prioritizing scalability, high performance, and flexibility to manage humongous amounts of data. So yes, you are correct. That's why they call it MongoDB. They took the Mongo from humongous and then obviously added DB to the end of it for database. So the more you know. But why MongoDB really? So, meaning there are hundreds of databases you could choose from when you're developing modern applications. So, here I'm going to show you why you should personally choose MongoDB. So, with MongoDB, you get the same foundational capabilities you expect from any production database. So, that means you're going to get ACID transactions, you're going to get query optimization, you're going to get comprehensive indexing, and also you're going to get enterprise level security, even if you're not utilizing it for enterprise level uh, programs. It's still really good for the programs you are building from a security perspective. Plus, we have something called the document model. So let's really start there. We're going to explore what the document model is, how it's so flexible, and the benefits you can get from it through MongoDB. So when you're working with any database, it's really important to understand how the data is being stored, because this is going to have an impact on the way that you're actually querying that data and just the overall database performance that you're going to get. So when you're using MongoDB's flexible document model, you can move quickly during development without having to sacrifice any of the optimizations of services that you would need once you do get everything basically deployed out to the world and have end users, actually engaging with your database. So here is an overview of MongoDB's hierarchy for organizing data. So in this first question, we're just going to cover documents and collections. And the first thing we're going to start off is with documents. So the documents are actually the bedrock of organizing data in MongoDB. Think of it as just like all of the data that you're storing within an actual database. They typically store information about any object and any of its related metadata. We're going to get into that a little bit more. You're going to see how the data is actually organized inside of a document in MongoDB. It's going to be using field value pairs, and the values can be a variety of data types. Just like with most databases, you're going to be able to use strings, numbers, dates, arrays, objects, blobs, and like so much more. And let's see. Yes, someone's asking about the slides. Yes, we can make these accessible so you can write on them later. I will drop the slides inside of our Discord channel later, so be sure to check it out there and you'll be able to have access to it. It stores the data in an optimized manner. Yes, that is correct. And we are going to get into that right now. So traditional relational databases actually store data in tables. So if you were to think of an entity like a car here on the slide, each attribute, it's going to be the wheels, the cars, the color, the car lights, pardon, the color. And you would have to store all of those things into separate different columns. MongoDB, however, stores data in JSON-like documents with a flexible schema. So JSON is just a lightweight data interchange format, and it's really easy for humans to read and write, and it's easy for machines to parse through and to generate. So let's look at the example in this animation here. You'll notice how this document can represent an entire object or entity. In this case, it's going to be the car that's going across the screen. In it, we're just going to have a few fields. It's going to be car ID, wheels, car lights, and paint color. If we wanted to, we could easily add more to this JSON like document. We could add the engine type, we can add the car brand, we could add the year it was built, we could add how many owners a specific car has had in the past if it's a used car, we could add whether it's a new car and it's never been driven before, you could add the mileage, etc. So all or nearly all of the information about an object or entity, whether it's the pieces of a car or a product inside of a catalog, it can all be contained within a single document. So that's like the essential flexibility and extendability of the document model. Here, a group of documents is contained inside of a collection. So we're going from documents, many documents stored inside a single collection, and you could have multiple collections. So for example, the document from the previous slide could be from a collection called cars, and that would contain obviously information about different cars. You could have sedans, coupes, convertibles, all different types of cars, and it would all be contained within that single collection. Finally, collections are housed by a database. So within a database, you could have many collections. Think of collections like different data, like not databases but tables, and then the database contains many tables. So here the database has many collections, and there's just one thing to note when you're thinking about the database. Typically when we talk about databases, we're referring to database management systems like MongoDB or Postgres, but in the context of MongoDB architecture, A database is just a group of collections. So we're not going to get into the specifics about nodes and clusters too much, but as you can imagine, a node is comprised of a lot of databases, and a cluster is further comprised by a group of nodes. So we got some questions here. So every record in a relational database table is a document in MongoDB. Every record inside of every document is contained inside of a collection, and every collection is then contained inside of a database. It is like, and someone's asking, is it a folder like? Yes, it is. In essence, they are. I wouldn't call it folders per se, but it is. It is sort of structured that way, where one, like I said, one database will have many collections inside of it, and then you would click into that database, you would see all your collections, and then from there, your collections, you would see inside of your collections, you would see a ton of different documents. Alrighty. So now that we understand how everything's sort of broken down inside of MongoDB, um, let's jump into the data modeling. So we've talked about MongoDB's flexible schema design, but you're probably wondering exactly how to model a schema for your particular application. And that's one of the cool aspects about MongoDB's platform. It just really depends on what you're building. And since document databases are capable of expressing data relationships in a lot of different and nuanced ways, when compared to relational databases, that means there are various considerations when developing your schema design. So let's see here. Everything that you want to learn about schema design and best practices, I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat here. You can check it out yourself on your own time if you want to do a little deep dive. But right now, I'm just going to go ahead and explain some of these things via this slide. So before you get to building your application, I really recommend that you ask a couple of these questions when starting to model your data. So the first thing you're going to ask is your application read or write heavy? This is really going to influence whether you want to optimize for your database being having optimal query performance, or whether you want it to have write efficiency. So the difference between that is, are you basically putting a lot of things into the database more frequently, or are you reading things from the database more frequently? And second, we should understand exactly what data is frequently accessed together, because keep in mind, I showed you how the document model works. You have to also bear in mind that MongoDB allows us to embed related data in a single document, and that can significantly reduce the number of queries needed. We're going to jump into that a little bit later, but it's definitely something to bear in mind as we're sort of thinking about the way that the data is structured and the schema designs and things like that. Third, we need to think about our performance requirements. So this will influence various decisions about indexing and sharding, or whether to embed a reference related data. If you're not familiar with these terms, no worries. I am actually going to get into them a little bit later in the presentation. So not to worry, but definitely bear it in mind. These are things that you do need to be thinking about when you're modeling your schema. And finally, we need to consider the scalability. So how big is your project going to be? How big does your database need to be? How will it grow over time? And how will the schema design we choose accommodate all of that growth? So really understanding your end goal prior to going in and modeling your data is going to help you really unlock a lot of MongoDB's benefits, especially since proper schema design is the most critical aspect of deploying a scalable, fast, and easy to use database. So for the purposes of today, once I get to the demo, I'm going to show you how to do something that's very simple, very bare bones. And then from there, you're going to see how everything sort of works when you're utilizing MongoDB Atlas and then leveraging that database using some sort of a programmatic driver. Today, we're going to be using Node.js, but if you want to use something else, you'll see how that works. But once you do start building out your own projects and thinking about things from a more I guess, developer centric or user centric perspective, all of this is going to start basically making more sense and becoming a little bit more relevant to your personal experience. So now that we've got that covered, let's quickly go over the difference between a relational schema design and a MongoDB schema design. So I would imagine that a lot of you folks out there are probably familiar with something like Postgres or any other type of like SQL based databases, and those are typically going to be relational databases. We've seen a lot of differences between relational ways of doing things and the MongoDB document way of doing things, but I promise we're not being repetitive for any reason, for no reason. This is all going to be very relevant for you, especially as we get to the demo part. So when you're designing a relational schema, developers will typically model their schema independent of queries. So that means they're not really thinking about the way that the data is going to be accessed. This requires a lot of normalization or the processes of splitting up your data into tables so you don't duplicate the data. In a relational example here, you can see that the user database, that the user data is actually split into separate tables, and it can be joined together using foreign keys. So in this case, it's going to be a user ID in the column of the professions and cars table. That's what's going to unite that data to to basically be queryable at a later point in time. Now, if you take a look at the MongoDB schema, you're going to see that it works differently because there isn't a formal process, algorithm, or any hard and fast rules for how you need to structure your data, how you need to structure your schema. It's just important to keep in mind that when you're actually designing your schema, the only thing that matters is that you design one that's going to work well for your application. So you can see that instead of having our data in various documents and collections, or in this case, tables and databases, we are embedding our data into arrays and objects within the same user object. So this allows us to just pull all of the data that we need with a single query and get all of the data that we need for that particular user. So that I've kind of mentioned it before. You need to think about the data that you're frequently accessing together because that data should live you should live together on your database at the end of the day. So, all right, I have a question. Can I get these notes so I can read these later by myself? Yes, you can. Can you get these notes? Yes, you will be able to get a copy of the slides. It will be on the Discord channel for you later. I will drop a PDF in there for you. In addition, you can go back and watch this video on YouTube. It's going to be recorded as well. Alrighty. So I've said the word embedding a lot. I said it earlier in the previous slide. So let's quickly go over what embedding versus referencing is. So the choice between embedding and referencing depends on the relationships in your data. So there are going to be 4 options depending on which side of the relationship you're embedding or referencing for. So there's going to be embedding on the one side and then embedding on the many side of the relationship. And similarly for referencing, it's going to be the one side of the relationship for referencing and then the many side of the relationship for referencing. And what that means is you are actually either embedding for one single document or embedding for many different documents and referencing for one single document and referencing for many single. So I'll kind of get into what this means in a second. Just know that it's also possible to reference on both sides, but it's just a lot less common. So we're not really going to focus on that today. I just wanted to let you know as a possibility. But for now, let's go ahead and dig into embedding on the one side. So the top left here. For one-to-one relationships, we can embed the related data directly within the parent document. So this keeps related data together and it simplifies the queries. So for example, attributes for a product can be embedded as an array within a product document. Here, the many or the attributes are embedded within the one, which is the product. So think of it this way. If you had like here we have a I'm sorry, here we have a parent document. It's got this one thing, it's about the user, and let's say your application is like a Facebook or something like that, and you have a users with many comments. So here what you can do instead of having like two separate documents that have the comments and then also the user, you would just embed all of the comments as an array into the user object. And then here now we have the one-to-many relationships. So embedding is the preferred approach to keep data that is accessed together, stored together. In this case, the one product is embedded within each of the many documents. So this is kind of the reverse of what we just talked about. So this can lead to data duplication, but it could be beneficial in some of the scenarios. Bear in mind, we might want to use references when the related data set is large or when the data set is often accessed independently, meaning the way we want to query or update the reference information by itself regularly. So we'll look into this method in just a moment. I saw that a question came in about embeddings and referencing. So essentially embedding something into a document means you're actually taking that data and storing it inside of that document, the actual data itself, not just a reference to the data, which I'm going to get into in a moment. So you're basically embedding the actual data that you would have put in a separate document into another document. So that's just what it means. And for referencing, we're going to get into that. Basically, what it means is you are referencing an ID of that data, and then that data lives in a different document. So let's take a look at referencing. You can use referencing on the one side of the relationship. In this case, each review document has a unique identifier. Here it's called review ID. The product document contains an array of these review IDs. So for the person that asked the question earlier, instead of actually embedding the IDs, I mean not the IDs, instead of actually embedding the reviews into this user object, we're embedding the IDs instead. So this is actually going to help to simplify how much data is actually inside of each document. So in this case, referencing is just sort of like cleaning up the data and making it a little bit less bloated. So referring to the review documents here, you can see that that's what the case is. And if necessary, you could actually join the data from the products in the reviews collection using the same IDs that you've referenced. If you want to play back in Twitch, you could just go ahead and like scroll on the bottom and just go backwards. And I will give an example. Let me just go ahead and I will give an example of when to use each one. I will do so after I explain the many side of the relationship here. So referencing on the many side, each review document now has a product ID used to refer to the product document. So as you can see here, there is a review, and then it will also refer to all of the different product documents that like product IDs that a review is present for. So once again, many to many relationships, you can either embed or reference depending on your requirements. It's also possible to use a combination of embedding and referencing, but like that's kind of going to be a little more advanced than stuff that we will cover in a one-on-one. But if you're curious about it, you can check out the MongoDB documentation. So let's jump back to the first slide here. So embedding on the one side. So basically, embedding on the one side means you are taking let's take for example a user object, and let's say that user inside of your program has like many different comments that they've left. So instead of having the comments live in a different document, you would just embed those actual comments into the user object. When you're referencing on the one side, you would take the one object, basically you take that user, and instead of embedding those comments into their document, the user document, what you would do is you would embed a reference to those comments. In this case, it would be comment like an ID tag that basically relates back to the comments collections. And then embedding on the many side, it's basically the opposite of what I just mentioned, and the referencing as well is just basically the opposite. So if you have any other questions on that, let me know. I think you can go ahead and sorry. How do we play back in Twitch? I think if you want to, you could just go ahead and open up a new window and like basically scroll back. I'll see if I could do it now on my end. I'm pretty sure that I can. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't. Not when something is going live, apparently. But like I said before, you'll be able to go ahead and watch the recording at a little bit at a later point in time. Is it important to name ID with ID? I think you could name it whatever you want as long as you know what it is. But yes, typically labeling IDs as ID inside of your database is going to be helpful for you in the future and anyone that's going into your database and sort of reading through any of the items that you have there. So now that we have a better understanding of what embedding and referencing is, let's go ahead and talk about MongoDB Atlas and MongoDB Compass, because these are going to be like pretty cool things that you're going to be able to use today. And we're going to be actually using both of them during our demo. So to start, let's focus on the operational capabilities within MongoDB Atlas. So Atlas provides a suite of services to streamline the development of cloud-based applications. And this goes for whatever your needs may be. If it's a small project, a large project, anything in between, you'll be able to basically get access to a bunch of different functionalities and tools. And instead of you having to focus on managing your database infrastructure, you could just go ahead and focus on building unique features. Since it's a database as a service, Atlas also automates and enhances processes for database management. And this includes deployment, monitoring, backup, restoring, and archiving any of the data that you have. It does all of it. And along with that, it has a set of really robust built in security features, like I mentioned before. On top of that, Atlas is also going to, it provides a built-in replication for all of your database deployments. So instead of just having a single point of failure, you'll have multiple points of failure. Um, this basically ensures data redundancy and the availability of your data in the event that there is like any type of disruption. So that's, going to be something that probably comes in very useful for all of you, especially when you start to build your projects. And in case you are wondering, you can receive free Atlas credits if you sign up for the GitHub Student Developer Pack. And you could also go ahead and just like sign up for a MongoDB Atlas account. And what you'll be able to do is spin up a free cluster to kind of play around with, which is what we're going to do a little bit later. Atlas is like a DBMS. Yes, Atlas is a database management system, and basically, I would call it even more than that. It's a data platform, and you'll see what that looks like, and like a little bit later. So now that we know what Atlas is, let's talk about MongoDB Compass. Basically, what this is a graphical user interface for all of your collections, your databases, anything that you have within your Atlas instance. You can actually connect to MongoDB Compass, and I'm going to show y'all how to do that. So it's great for if you are a more visual learner and just want to interact with your data. It also has like built-in AI features. You could have it just like spin up different queries for you utilizing AI just by like basically talking to it in natural language. So that's really cool. And once again, it's something that you could just download directly onto your computer. It's free. I'll send you all the links for MongoDB Compass, but let me see here. Let me see here if I could find it. You could also, once you do get set up for a MongoDB Atlas account, there are ways for you to go in and download MongoDB Compass directly from there as well. So y'all will see that in a bit. But as I mentioned, there was a MongoDB AI chat. I just wanted to quickly talk about that. This is going to be a little helper, and it lives on the MongoDB documentation page, and it's trained on all of the MongoDB documentation data. So if you need help creating anything using MongoDB or have any questions just in general, that's going to be a great place for you to just jump in. Just go ahead and head over to the MongoDB docs, and I will link that as well. MongoDB documentation. And you'll be able to, yeah, just ask questions directly to the AI chatbot, and it's going to be something that is super performant for you. And if I could just find it here, there you go. And feel free to explore on your own. Is We've got a couple of questions here. Is Atlas for cloud, and can we run MongoDB on PC? Yes, you can run MongoDB on PC. Atlas is a browser-based service. So yes, and you would be able to actually like deploy your clusters to the cloud. I'm actually going to show you that in a little bit here. Someone's asking what the pros and cons of referencing and embedding are. Well, if you're referencing something, you're just putting an ID inside of an existing document. So that means that your document is not going to be as expansive. It's not going to have as much granular data inside of it. The drawback to that is now you have to have separate documents inside of a different collection. So it does sort of make your database a little bit more distributed. Whereas in embedding, you could just basically put everything into the same document. But then the drawback of that is that your documents become very large. So those are the pros and cons. All right, moving right along. We're just going to jump into something called CRUD. If you've worked with databases before, you know that CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. So now that we've explored the document model, we're going to get into the heart of what MongoDB actually does and what sets it apart from other databases. So we've discussed how to model your data, design your schemas, and we've started to think about how the document model works in real life applications. We've discussed embeddings and referencing and the pros and cons of that. But the thing about MongoDB is that the schemas here aren't static. They exist to serve a living, breathing application that evolves with your data and your user needs. And that's where CRUD comes in. So basically, it's how you store, retrieve, and modify your data as part of your application's workflow. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive into how you do some of that. First, it's going to be like basically I'll show you in the slides, and then afterwards we're going to jump into an example. So let's review the typical syntax for a query in MongoDB. We're always going to use a library to connect to MongoDB and query a database. So it could be anything. You could either use Compass, or you could use a driver like Node.js, for instance, Python, Go. There's like a ton of different supported languages there. So you'll be able to write code in the language of choice and then send and receive objects directly in your program. And here, obviously, we have first the DB is the keyword. Then we have the collection name. We have an operator, which is a command. We have a query or a filter, which is the criteria of what data it is that you actually want to pull down. And then we have options and settings. So here, as you can see, we are doing a db.collection find. So that means we are trying to find something within a collection inside of a database. And the age is going to be greater than 25. The projection, the name 1, age 1. This means that the options and settings include only the name and age fields in the results. And then the sort is -1 for age. That means it's going to sort the results by age in descending order. And then the limit is 10. That means we're just only going to pull the first 10 results that pop up. So let's take a look at how we would first create something, meaning insert something into the database. So the shell syntax in there's going to be shell syntax in these slides. It's not going to be the same. This is basically how you would engage with your MongoDB database using something like CLI or command line interface. If you're not familiar with MongoDB shell, that's all it is. And you could use this to work with your database directly. But like I said before, MongoDB actually provides libraries for each of the major programming languages, and we'll kind of go through the entire list right after this. So first, let's look at how you could actually insert data. So the first thing, inside of your current database, there's going to be a collection called authors. And what you're going to do is you're going to instantiate the insert one command. And what this means is you're basically going to insert one item into your database. There's also a version of this called insert many if you want to insert many multiple documents. So here we're actually passing a document into the method. And in this case, it's going to be a document for the author, Jane Austen. So the document includes her name and the books she's written and an array of her aliases. So once you run this inside of the CLI, you're actually going to push this document directly into your MongoDB database. The next thing you're going to want to learn is whether you could read something into your something from your database. Remember, we mentioned whether or not your program is going to be read or write heavy. This means you're just for read. It just means you're getting data from your database and then displaying it to your end user. So here in the current database, it's going to be authors inside of which is the collection you're trying to basically find something in. And from there, you're going to find all of the documents that match your query. In this case, the query is Jane Austen, and it's going to retrieve every single one. And once you pass the query, it's going to get everything that has the name Jane Austen inside of it. When you're updating data, it's pretty much the same thing. The only thing that changes is the actual operator. So here you have the database. Once again, the collection is authors, and the operator here that you're the command here that you're looking for is going to be the update one. Once again, there is an update many available as well. And here, what you're going to do is you're going to find any document where the name is Jane Austen with an I, meaning there's a misspelling. And then the operator is the $set operator, which means you're going to set the name inside of those documents that are found to the correct spelling, which is Jane Austen with an E. And then finally, we have delete. So very similar in syntax with the previous ones. Once again, you're going to be in the current database. Your collection is going to be named authors. And then you're going to use the delete one command. And it's like with delete one, what it's going to do is actually going to delete the very first document that MongoDB finds that matches your query parameters. In this case, it's going to be anything with the name Jane Austen. And that's essentially it. Once you run this command, you're going to be able to delete something. So we do have an example that I want to walk y'all through. Let me see if there are any other questions in the chat before I move on. Embeddings are vector representations of data images and audio. So yes, you're talking about embeddings essentially from a vector search perspective. However, there are and they're sort of related in the same sense that you can add embeddings into your existing data if you want to vectorize it. But in this case, embeddings versus referencing is just a very simple adding something into adding like information into a document, which is embedding, versus adding a reference to information in a document, in this case using some sort of reference ID, which is referencing. I haven't found any solution yet. I'm sorry. Okay. Here we go. The way of storing in MongoDB is the same as creating structures in C programming. I'm actually not familiar with C programming, but I'm happy to dig into it a little bit later if we have more time during the Q&A. Are we getting a certificate for these sessions? You don't get a certificate for this particular session, but you can redeem a skills badge. So if you go to ghw.mlh.io/challenges, we are going to have all the challenges there. You're going to see MongoDB skills badges. You can definitely get the standard most simple like skills badge based off of the information you're learning from this workshop today. And yes, you do join for your own benefit, but we do have challenges where you can get the certifications for the skills badges, which are pretty cool. If you think about it, you could share them on LinkedIn. You could add them to your LinkedIn account. Very cool stuff. Where are the organizations list we can start contributing to for Open Source Week? Just go ahead and check out the primary website and you'll see stuff like that. For now, I just want to focus on questions that relate to the topic at hand, which is MongoDB. So I have a question. Can we get free certification from MongoDB University using student ID? Yes, you get $150 worth of free MongoDB University credits if you sign up using the GitHub Student Developer Pack. So go into the GitHub Student Developer Pack, you'll get $50 in free credits for MongoDB Atlas, and then you'll also get $150 worth of content through MongoDB University. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to go ahead and earn skills badges, you can also do that, and you'll be able to do so for free. Man, did my mouse die? No, it did not. The data is stored in matrices ultimately to store, right? The data is stored inside of JSON-like objects, and I'll show you that in a moment. Can we also add objects from one DB to another, like join in SQL? Yes, you can add objects from one DB to another. You don't need to join them. Like I said, you could just reference them, or if they have the same ID, you could reference them at the same time using the ID. Is shell syntax same across languages? The shell syntax is its own language, essentially. It's something that you would use for CLI. But if you wanted to leverage your database programmatically, you would be able to do so using your programming language of choice. And here I'm going to kind of show y'all that. So basically, when you get your MongoDB Atlas account, everything is going to be set up for you like this. It's going to look exactly like this. You're going to be able to go in and create a cluster. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create our own cluster. And as I mentioned before, a cluster is something that contains databases, and then databases contain collections, and then the collections themselves contain documents. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and get the free one. Everyone gets a free cluster with every project that they spin up on MongoDB Atlas. So just bear that in mind. This is not something that's going to cost you any money, but it will be deployed to the cloud. It will have limited utilization in terms of how many reads and writes and updates that you get over the course of this cluster being live, but it is free. So, go in, choose your provider of choice, choose the region that you want it to live in. Here I am in the East Coast, so I'm going to go ahead and use that instead. You could use these tags, but it's not necessary. And I usually just automate security setup. I'm not going to preload my sample data set because I want to show y'all what it looks like just bare bones first. And I'm going to change my cluster name to Global Hack Week. So let's go ahead and create this deployment. Oh no. Whoops. Okay. That's interesting stuff. All right, let me remove this, and then I'm gonna go ahead and share again. Stop screen, share screen, and I'm gonna share my entire screen this time. Apologies for that. So here we are once again. Sorry that y'all didn't get to see that first part. Basically, what happens is you're going to go in and you can create your own cluster. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new project here so that y'all can see it from the get-go. So I'm going to call this one GHW OS. I'm not going to create any key or value pair here, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit next. I'm just going to create the project altogether. Should be fine. And now you're going to see this page. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a cluster, as I mentioned before. I'm just going to go ahead and pick the free cluster. And thank you, Soham, for shouting that out here. I'm going to call this cluster GHW. I'm going to pick the provider, and I'm just going to leave this here because that's the closest one to me. But if you're in a different region, you could change the region yourself as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a deployment. So now that I've created a deployment, I'm going to hide this, and I am going to reset this password to something that I want. And I'm going to create this database user. So it's going to be my username, and I'm going to go ahead and create this new database user. And I guess I could choose a connection method. These are the methods that I was telling y'all before. You can choose different drivers. And here, obviously, I have exposed my database password again, but don't worry, I'm going to remove it anyway after this, so no worries. At any rate, so now that you have your cluster set up, you're just going to go ahead and jump into the clusters here. And what you could do is you can actually create a new database. It looks like it's sort of spinning something up here. I'm just going to go ahead and browse collections. It looks like it's still deploying. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my own data. So adding the data, what I'm going to do is I am going to create a database name. It's going to be Major League Demo. And then my collection name is going to be sample. And that's fine. I don't need any of this. This is just going to be a really simple sort of setup here. All right. So once you do get into, let me just close this out. Once you do finally get your data, your collection set up, your database set up, and your collection set up, you're going to see here that it's actually being referenced. So this is Major League Demos is the database, sample is the collection, and then GHW OS is the cluster that we built. So someone's asking, could you please tell us what to do after getting to the site? Like I said before, you're just going to sign up for a MongoDB Atlas account. Once you get through that Atlas account, what you're going to do is you're going to hit the cluster button. It's going to be like add a cluster, and then you're going to add a free cluster. And that's exactly where we're at right now. That's how we've gotten to this point. And what I'm going to do is I am actually going to insert a document, and this is going to be called a message. So that's going to be what I am doing, and it's going to basically this is what I'm inserting. It's going to be a single document. It's got a field value pair. The field is going to be message, and the value is going to be hello world. And as you can see here, we've just written our first piece of data into our database, which is pretty cool. So that's going to be the first step. The second step is now what we want to do is we want to actually be able to access this data programmatically. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my VS Code here, and I've got an environment file, and I've also got my index.js file already set up. So the environment file itself contains it obviously contains my my user database name and stuff like that. So I'll be able to access everything that I need to access through there. But here I am going to just go ahead and start up a node project. So the first thing I'm going to do is npm init. And what that's going to do is just going to pre-fill some of this data for me and then spin up a package.json. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to npm install.env so I can access my environment file. And then I'm going to npm install MongoDB latest so I get the latest version. And here we go. So I've got everything I need to kind of utilize MongoDB. If I go in here, I've got the .env, I've got MongoDB here as well. And the only other thing I want to do is I want to add a type, and I'm going to call this a module so that I can go in and actually access the .env from like whatever's in the environment variable from my actual code. So first things first, I want to be able to draw up a connection. So now that I have this stuff like basically good to go, like I have this like, item inside of my collection here, I'm just going to go ahead and connect the driver. So what you're going to do is you can go in here and you can actually connect using a URI. So here we're going to take this URI that's listed here, and we are going to actually get that set up inside of our database. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just make sure that I have the proper setup. Da, 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 da. And I'm just doing something in the background here so I don't keep exposing my stuff. And here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is take that URI. I'm going to embed it into my index.js file. So now that I have this here, let's just go ahead and copy and paste everything. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to import the Mongo client from MongoDB. Then I'm going to import the .env, and then I'm going to create a .env config. And let me just go ahead and wrap this text around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a const URI that stores my URI string, and I am going to make that a template, basically like stored in tick marks here, because I want to make sure that I'm actually able to reference the password that I have inside of my environment file. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to create a new client, and this is going to be new Mongo. Yep, that's correct. It's going to be URI. Now, the thing I'm going to do is create a const database object here. Client.db is going to be, and we named our database Major League Demo. Y'all remember that. Now I want to be able to reference the collection. So it's going to be database.collection. And I think it's just sample. All right. So now that we have all of this stuff, basically what I've done is I've created a object that I can reference inside of a function for like the stuff inside of my database. So right now our database only really includes one thing. It includes that one message. It's called hello world. So what we're going to do is we're going to write an asynchronous function, and we're going to run it, and then it's going to be able to basically pull that one message or that one document inside of our database using our programming language. So this is pretty cool. So we're just gonna go ahead and spin up a new function here. We're gonna do a try. So our query needs to be instantiated here, and it's going to be, I'm just gonna go ahead and, very literally include this here. Hello world. And that's because I know exactly what I'm looking for. Obviously, for you, if you were doing this from like building out an actual application, you're going to want to go in and maybe make this more dynamic. But for our case, we're just going to go ahead and hard code everything in here. And then now what I'm doing is I am passing that query in to another variable, and then I'm going to console log that variable. So here, as you can see, like I've created the query. This is the query I'm passing to the database. There is a sample. That's the variable that I'm storing the query in, and then I'm actually giving the command here, which is to find one, and then I am console logging the sample. So then from there, I do want to have a finally statement written up, and it's going to be await client.close. And then lastly, what I want to do is I also want to, in case there's an error, you do want to run a catch here, and the console.dir just kind of makes it a little bit more easy to read your error message if you do get an error message. So now that that's done, what I'll do is I'll jump in and I'll node.index.js. And injecting from .env, it looks like secrets across machines. Oh no, maybe an issue here. So let's see, package.json, type module, index.js. This should work. All right. Process.env. All righty. Let's see here. So I do have my model. So it says injecting env1 from .env. Oh, I see. That's not an error. It's just saying that it's null. I think it's because we actually didn't reference this correctly. If we go back into our collection, we'll find this. It's hello world and it's message. So let's go back into here and make sure that we have, I put this, and I put the exclamation, I think, or I think VS Code actually auto completed that for me. Let's just make sure it's the right thing. Yeah, it's just hello world. Okay, cool. So let's do it again. Node.index.js. And here you can see we are actually able to console log the object ID along with the hello world. So this is like basically how you're going to be able to go in and query your database once you have it set up in MongoDB Atlas. So it's really cool because I have the MongoDB Atlas database uploaded onto the cloud, and it's my free cluster. And all I need to do in order to access it is go in here and make sure that I'm referencing the URI for that particular cluster. I'm passing through my username and my username password to access that particular cluster. And then here I have a function running that is going to give me the, like basically allow me to find the one message that we have there. So that's how you would read from your database. So now that we've done that, I'm just gonna go ahead and comment some of this stuff out because I want to show y'all. Oops. Oh my gosh, something's happening and it's not what I like. Hello, get out of here. All right, let me just figure this out here. Oh yeah. All right, cool. Cancel. And let me go ahead and comment this out. I'll just delete it because I don't really need it anymore. And we'll go ahead and we're going to try a different function now. So what we're going to do is we're going to write something into the database, which is going to be a little bit different from before, but it should be the same thing. I've actually already prepared this, so I'll just copy and paste into here and kind of walk y'all through the code. So the first thing we're going to do is actually update this because it looks like it wants double quotations. So it's going to be very much similar from before. This is going to be a write function that we're doing. So we're going to create a variable with the thing that we want to write into our database. Then we're going to insert one, and we're going to basically store that function into a variable. And then we're going to console log that function. I mean, that variable itself. So what this is going to do is actually going to insert this message into our database. So let's go ahead and run the program and see what happens. And it looks like it did insert it into the database. So that's acknowledged as true. Now what we'll do is we'll jump back into Compass and check out our database collection and see, is there any place that I can go in and refresh this? There you go. So you just click on it again, and then the how are you doing message pops up here. So that's how you would write to the database itself. Hopefully everyone here is following. Hey guys, what are you building? Man, after the NPM supply chain hacks, I'm defaulting to using PMPM instead. Wow, this is really easy. I'm glad that you think it's easy. It is kind of easy, isn't it? It's pretty cool. And if you want to like kind of read up on this a little bit later, you're able to do so. I'll send you the exact documentation or the tutorial that I wrote up earlier for this stuff. So now that we have like the ability to write into our document, what we'll do is we'll actually just go in. I'll delete this function again. I want to write a function that allows me to write many things into the database. So I've already written it. I'm just going to have to kind of clean this up a little bit because now that I know the program wants actual double quotations here, I'll just click this. That's fine. Cool. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm writing I created a write many function. So we're going to create an array we're gonna create a variable that contains an array, and it has like, the field value pairs, the same ones that we're using for the database itself. Here we are doing a bunch of messages inside of this array, and it's gonna be a bunch of different messages here. Same thing that we did last time. Instead of the insert one, we're doing the insert many, and we are then passing along that variable that we created into that command, and then we're going to just console log the variable that we stored that command into. So pretty simple stuff. Let's go ahead and run our node.index.js, and let's see what happens. All right, so it looks like it injected all three, so that's really cool. And what I'll do now is I will jump back into my database, and let's see here. Refresh it, and it looks like all of those things are now inside of our database, inside of the sample collection, which is really cool. And the last thing I want to do is I want to be able to go in and actually read many from the database. And I'll show y'all what that looks like here. And there is going to be a different operator that I will show you. I don't know why that's crossed out. That's weird. At any rate, this should work. So I've created a read many function. And basically what I'm doing is I am querying any messages inside of my sample collection, And this means this $NE means not. So anything that is not null is going to come in. And then my limit obviously is anything with an ID and a message inside of it. And then what I'm doing is I am passing both of those into a sample variable, and then for await. So basically for each sample, what I'm going to do is for each console log exactly what happens. And then here, obviously, I have the catch. So let's see what happens when I node index.js. And what it does is it displays everything for me exactly the same way the messages would actually appear inside of the database. So it's a little bit more human readable at this point. All right. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's like, the main gist of like MongoDB and like getting started with the collections themselves. The one thing I do want to show y'all is with this cluster, what you could do is you can actually go in and you should be able to add sample data. So you could load a sample data set here, and this is going to be basically it's like a Netflix kind of data. So you'll see it in a second. I'll show y'all how you can go in and kind of browse through the data as well. So this should be pretty cool once it does load up. Come on. So it's taking a little while, obviously, but let's go ahead and start browsing our collections just in case. So it does have some data already loaded up. As you can see here, the database is going to be called sample_mflix, and then it's going to have a comments collection. So these are different comments that each of these users have. It's just filled out with lorem ipsum. And then here, different type of theaters collections, different addresses and things like that. And I think it's going to flesh out a little bit more. The one thing I did want to show y'all earlier was how to connect this, how to connect the actual database to your MongoDB Atlas. I mean, MongoDB Compass. Let's see if I can do that now really quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this here. And as you can see here, it asks you if you want to download it. I already have it installed, so that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this URI here. And in the background, what I'll do is I will insert my actual password. And the way that would look is you're going to take that URI and you're going to go into Compass and you're going to create a new connection. And then you're going to drop it in here. And obviously for me, it's going to be a little bit different because it's going to have the actual password set up. But then once you get it connected, what you can do is you're going to actually go in and you're going to see all of your data inside of MongoDB Compass, which is a little bit easier. You'll be able to go in and generate queries here and utilize some of the AI companion items that they have. But outside of that, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if anyone here has any other questions. I know I'm running close on time. I know I spent a lot of time doing the demo, so I apologize. But I do want to mention that there are a bunch of different MongoDB skills badges that you could be earning this weekend, or this week, pardon, through MongoDB, through our Global Hack Week channel. I mean, I'm sorry, our Global Hack Week event. And I've dropped the link here in the chat for y'all. Outside of that, you know, we do want y'all to go in and basically earn these skills badges, because the first thing is you're going to be able to learn a lot of new things about MongoDB. You're going to be able to validate the things that you have learned about MongoDB, and you can, you know, proudly display all of the things that you need to display in terms of all of your accomplishments and what you've learned. It's a really quick and easy process. You go in, you watch about like 60 to 90 minutes worth of content about a particular subject. So that's the learning portion. And then you'll do a skills check. It's 10 questions. It's a very like quick skills check, multiple choice, and you can go in and earn your skills badges that way. I actually earned a ton during the last Global Hack Week. Like, you know, not all of these, but most of these. And yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. So that's going to be it. I know we said Q&A. I kind of got through the Q&A throughout the workshop itself. If y'all have any other questions, please drop a line inside of our Discord channel, discord.mlh.io. There is going to be a MongoDB channel. I'm going to be dropping the slides in there as well. You can go in and you could rewatch the recording of this if y'all have any questions. And please don't hack me, because I am destroying that cluster now. If you saw my if you saw my password. At any rate, it's been great, y'all. I really appreciate having everyone here. Next time I will be working, I'll be showing y'all how to do MongoDB vector search. So it's going to be an intro to vector search. So for some of the folks that had questions about, you know, embeddings in typical MongoDB like documents, and then embeddings in a vector search context, I'll be able to explain that as well. And yeah, I'm glad that y'all appreciate it. Appreciate the workshop. Ryan in the chat. Wonder which Ryan this is. But yeah. All right. Love y'all. I will see y'all later, and join me next time on Monday. Keep it locked, because we've got more content coming at you from Global Hack Week open source. And yeah, happy hacking, y'all. Take it easy.